Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I'm going to be your guide today, kind of stepping into that resident startup advisor role, because we are unpacking a seriously fascinating piece of tech history. We're jumping way back to 2007 to decode a rare, super in-depth interview with Elon Musk. But look, we aren't just taking a stroll down memory lane here. We are going to extract his exact startup strategy and literally turn it into an actionable playbook for selecting and building ventures with massive impact. If you've ever wondered how to build companies that actually move the needle for humanity, well, this is the masterclass you've been waiting for.
Okay, but before we get into the nuts and bolts of the strategy, we've got to talk mindset. A startup business is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. That incredibly gritty quote actually comes from a friend of Musk's, and he brought it up in this 2007 interview to describe the sheer agony of building hard tech. As an advisor, I see so many founders whose ultimate dream is a quick exit, right? Sell the company, retire to a beach somewhere, drink beers, and watch the sunset. Musk actually explicitly calls that lifestyle torture. He thinks it's pretty awful. Building a truly monumental business is brutal, grueling work. You absolutely have to be deeply compelled to do it.
So, let's dive right into our playbook for today. We'll kick things off with the Founder's Impact Framework, then we'll move right into market entry. After that, we're tackling two absolutely massive goals: mitigating global climate risks and building multi-planetary insurance. And finally, we'll wrap up with the day-to-day reality of hard tech.
All right, part one, the Founder's Impact Framework.
Think about it. How do you even decide what to build? And more importantly, how do you gather the credibility and the capital to tackle global, existential problems? Well, you definitely don't start by building orbital rockets in your garage. Think about the timeline here. Literally 2 days into his physics program at Stanford, Musk quits to start a media company called Zip2. Fast forward a few years, he sells it for $37 million. Boom. Then, he co-establishes PayPal, leading to a massive acquisition by eBay just 4 years after that. From an advisory standpoint, this is completely textbook. He secured massive liquidity events and built an undeniable entrepreneurial track record in software before he ever shifted a single dollar into the insanely capital-intensive world of hard tech.
But here's the kicker. That software phase, it was always just a stepping stone. Right out of college, way before any of those early successes, he had already pinpointed 3 specific areas that he believed would have the maximum impact on the future of humanity. Those were the internet, space exploration, and sustainable energy. He knew exactly what fields he was going to disrupt. He just needed to build the capital base to actually pull it off.
Which brings us perfectly to the ultimate venture selection criteria. This is the core question he asks himself. Does what I'm doing matter to the world? Simple, but incredibly heavy. He openly admits, there are much easier ways to make money than starting a rocket company or an electric car company. But his primary motivation was never about finding the easiest path to personal wealth. It was all about assessing what the world fundamentally needed and then stepping up to build it, no matter how ridiculously difficult it was going to be.
Moving on to part 2, market entry and high-end disruption. Picture the scene back in 2007. The established auto industry firmly believed 2 things as absolute gospel. 1, viable electric vehicles were technologically impossible. And 2, even if you could somehow build one, consumers wouldn't buy it anyway. Tesla's contrarian goal wasn't just to sell a few cars, it was to categorically disprove both of those deeply held assumptions. The mission was to serve as a high-profile example that would literally force the entire deeply entrenched automotive industry to change its trajectory. Talk about a massive pivot.
But to do that, you absolutely cannot build a boring, glorified golf cart. You have to build a vastly superior product. Consider the specs of the original 2007 Tesla Roadster. We're talking 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. That beat any Porsche on the market and most Ferraris. And remember, this was pure electric, no compromising hybrid engine here. That meant an immediate, thrilling torque response that made the car just incredibly fun to drive, all while boasting twice the energy efficiency of a Prius. Musk completely shattered that slow, compromising hybrid stereotype by entering the market with a vehicle that absolutely dominated on pure performance. And this high-performance debut? It was step 1 of a totally brilliant 3-step go-to-market strategy. Think about it. When you introduce cutting-edge tech, it's inherently expensive. So step 1 is the high unit cost, low-volume sports car, the Roadster. You sell to the high-end market to iron out the technical kinks and, crucially, to fund your R&D. Step 2 leverages all those learnings to build a $49,000 mid-market sedan. And finally, Step 3 uses the scale achieved in Step 2 to deliver a $30,000 mass-market affordable vehicle. It's just a highly disciplined, perfectly phased approach to driving down that cost curve.
Section 3. Mitigating global climate risks.
Going deeper here, Musk identified the rising CO2 concentration in our atmosphere as literally the most significant issue of the 21st century. His core thesis was that we have to fundamentally transition away from a mine-and-burn, hydrocarbon-based economy, period. The destination we have to reach is a sustainable energy economy, one powered entirely by clean, zero-emission sources. Specifically, he saw pairing solar power with electric vehicles as the only truly viable path forward for us.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that Tesla is not just a car company. Musk explicitly stated he wasn't interested in just starting another auto manufacturer. Tesla was meticulously engineered as a mechanism to literally force a global transition to sustainable energy. The logic was simple. If the major legacy automakers wouldn't make the shift on their own, Tesla would step in, prove the market viability of EVs, and force them to adapt or die.
Part 4. Building multi-planetary insurance.
Shifting gears to SpaceX. The overarching, massive goal here is making human life multi-planetary, starting with Mars. Now, I want to be super clear on this because it's a common misconception. This is not because Musk believes Earth is doomed. Actually, in the interview, he explicitly states he's highly optimistic about Earth's future. Going to Mars is about creating a richer, more diverse, spacefaring human civilization. But here's the startup reality check. How on earth do you fund a mission to Mars? Well, you monetize the journey. Their strategic first step was building the Falcon 9 and Dragon spacecraft to provide cost-effective launch services and cargo transport for their primary anchor customer, NASA.
And you really have to appreciate the massive barrier to entry SpaceX created, especially when compared to entrepreneurial peers back in 2007. Take Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic. They were aiming for suborbital flight, maxing out around Mach 3. SpaceX, they were aiming for true orbital flight, hitting Mach 25. Musk used a great analogy for this. He compared Branson's suborbital effort to simply crossing the English Channel, whereas SpaceX's orbital ambitions were like circumnavigating the entire globe, just totally different leagues. To put that insane level of difficulty into perspective, think about the number 625. In the interview, Musk explained that getting to suborbital space takes roughly 9 units of energy. Achieving true orbital velocity, like what SpaceX was attempting, that takes 625 units of energy, which, by the way, you then have to safely burn off upon re-entry without incinerating. The scale of technological difficulty is just exponential. As Musk wryly noted, rocket science is an idiom for a reason, folks. It's harder than it looks.
Section 5. The reality of hard tech.
Managing companies with ambitions this staggeringly large requires a totally insane level of discipline. So how does one person lead 2 massive companies at once? Well, in 2007, Musk was highly focused. He spent roughly 80% of his time acting as the day-to-day CEO of SpaceX. He only spent about 2 to 3 days a month, roughly 20% of his time, providing strategic guidance, product oversight, and funding for Tesla. He wasn't trying to micromanage both of them simultaneously. He strategically prioritized the enterprise that required his highest daily technical involvement.
Look, when you are pushing the literal boundaries of physics, failure is going to happen. It's inevitable. But Musk's philosophy on this is incredibly calculated. He says that while they are absolutely committed to succeeding, they are also committed to failing in a new way. I love that phrasing. The goal is that if a failure happens, it absolutely must add to the collective body of human knowledge. That way, the next iteration or even the next generation of engineers can avoid making that exact same mistake twice. Finally, let's dismantle the glamorous Hollywood myth of the billionaire CEO. His day-to-day reality in 2007 was incredibly grounded. He wasn't doing that trendy wake up at 4 a.m. routine. He started his day around 9:30 a.m. and worked straight through until 8 p.m. He didn't have some massive, lavish executive suite either. He literally worked from a standard cubicle right on the floor at SpaceX, surrounded directly by his engineering colleagues. And as a trade-off for demanding absolute, top-tier results, he established no fixed hours for his inventors and creators. It was 100% about prioritizing output over face time.
So we've walked through the framework, we've seen the market entry strategy, the massive existential goals, and the grueling daily execution. And as an advisor looking at this 2007 playbook, I gotta say, the most striking element isn't even the technology itself, it's the sheer unbelievable scale of the ambition. I mean, during this interview, Musk was literally told that his goal to make life multi-planetary simply wasn't big enough, a statement that actually took him by surprise. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as you look at your own career, your own startup, or whatever projects you're passionate about. Look at the problems you are trying to solve right now. Does what you are doing truly matter to the world? And ultimately, Is your goal big enough? Think about that for a bit. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll catch you next time on The Explainer.